Fantastic. Well, warm welcome everyone to this event with Access Agile Festival. I hope you've managed to make it along to some other events. We started yesterday with a wonderful opening ceremony, and yeah, it seems like it's been a really packed day of events. Sadly, I've not made that many due to work, but I'm delighted to be here this evening with you all. I've got a quick slide to bring up, and I'm just going to share just by way of the intro, and then I will hand over to our wonderful guest speaker. Hopefully you can see that coming through now. Suzanne, you want to give me a nod because I've got two screens here. You can see that? Excellent. So yeah, hopefully you've made it along to some other events. If you've not, and this is your first, very warm welcome to you. This is the Access Agile Festival, and yeah, this is our vision. So this is our mini fest, which emerged out of February's Access Agile 20 Reflect Festival, which some of you I'm sure remember. It was a month-long festival, so this is our next iteration of that. This is our emergence we were looking for, and it is a worldwide global event. It's fully inclusive. We want everybody to be involved. Everyone's welcome, and it is of course free. It's been put together by a group of very hard-working volunteers. So well done to all of them for making this happen. And yeah, so you'll probably see the website just for completeness. This is the website address if you're interested. It started today and it runs till Saturday, 7th through to the 9th, and we're on lots of channels. If you want to look at other events of the program, check them out on Meetup. You'll also find, the groups on LinkedIn. You'll find Slack. We're on Facebook, everywhere. All the prominent social channels. So yeah, that's that. And we do have a code of conduct. Very, very important. All the events are adhering to that, and everybody involved in the festival is agreed to be part of that. So do please respect the code of conduct. If you want to read about it, you'll find it on the website. Let me just stop my share. And yeah, I am super delighted to be doing this session. It's the first one I'm hosting. And Suzanne and I sort of know each other from LinkedIn, but it's the first time we've really met. So we had a nice, good chat before. So I'm really chuffed to be hosting Suzanne, and she's got an amazing background. She's an Agile coach and a Scrum Master, and I think the UK's primary or only ambassador for personal agility. I didn't know that. Yeah. And in the day job, you work at the London Stock Exchange, which sounds very exciting. And you've got lots of other talents which you can read about on Suzanne's bio, and I'm sure I saw something about singing and gigging somewhere. I think I did see you singing. Yes, that was exciting. So, fantastic. So yeah, a woman of many talents. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Suzanne to take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Seth, and thank you everybody for joining and investing your time to be here. So I will start the session by saying that my goal by the time you leave in just over 50 minutes, if you stay the course, if you don't get put off and leave before then, is I hope that I have brightened your day by even 1%. I hope you feel better about engaging with your daily work and agile ways of working and engaging with teams than at the start of this conversation. So that's the goal I'm setting myself, okay? And I really, really hope that you get a lot out of this. The other thing to say is, in terms of ways of working from my point of view, there is only one rule, okay? I said it, I'm an agile coach and I use the word rule, but the rule is that I require everybody on the call to positively disrupt this session and conversation if inspiration strikes you. If you get the urge to ask anything, if you think I'm wrong, if you want to make a point, if you make a connection with something that's relevant in your daily work, please, please, please don't worry about me being mid-flow with talking. Please just shout up, all right, because somebody else might get excited about an application of it too. Now, what we also need, because I'm going to share my screen shortly so we can get started fully. I can't see if somebody puts something in the chat, or I can't see your non-verbals, right? So we need to agree some kind of silly word that somebody is going to shout out if anybody puts anything in the chat. So I know that I need to go back and look at the chat. Or if somebody can help me out.
Yeah, I will. I think that'll be my responsibility. So you're all
Oh, that's great. Because usually I ask people to shout the word spreadsheet because it's usually suitably traumatic enough to get my attention. But that's great, Sath. I forgot, of course, you can alert me to that. That's great. Right, so let me share my screen then. We're going to get into the presentation. Okay, so welcome to Metrix and Chill. Okay, and this is an opportunity to think about your daily experiences of work and how you engage with teams or individually around metrics, around data, around the stories that you and the teams that you work with tell using the metrics that you have access to. Okay, so I'm going to guide you through some of the key elements of Metrix and Chill that make this technique so effective for working with agile teams. Okay, so who's familiar with this phrase? Start with why. Where's that from?
Simon Sinek.
Yes, exactly. Well done. So Simon Sinek. Now, I love that phrase. Equally, with Metrix and Chill, I always encourage people to not start with why, but start with why not. The whole premise of Metrix and Chill as an approach, which incidentally I refer to as a value articulation approach, is to completely blast out any preconceptions about what metrics should be or what they are currently, and actually craft a vision for how metrics can be made the most empowering and powerful aspect of daily work. Okay, so I know that seems like a high ask, but that is the goal of Metrix and Chill, and it is tried and tested, and I've used it for several years, and most recently with tech teams in my current and previous organization. So it's also crucially asking this question in terms of metrics. Who cares? Who cares about these metrics? Okay, not just about the data themselves, but actually who cares? Right, now, in terms of outcomes, wishes I have for you, all right, I shared my goal. There are specific outcomes, that I would like you to have by the time we finish. I'd like you to feel more empowered to articulate your value, or rather, the value of the team that you're working with or teams. I want you to feel able more to embrace the complexity of your environment, and crucially, this phrase, maintaining your serendipity. All right. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with this phrase, but it's this idea that, that you actually have the confidence in the range of techniques around articulating value through metrics and handling those, that you can afford to maintain the truest sense of agility, i.e. maintaining some flexibility about how you actually engage around metrics and how you articulate the values of the teams that you're working with. So crucially here, as I've said, it's not just about outcomes, and it's certainly not just about outputs. Okay, we regularly talk about that distinction. Okay, the value of this approach to use with teams is in the journey of the pursuit to understand what matters. Okay, so this is in the same way as, with estimation. So when Scrum teams are estimating, of course, yes, we've got Fibonacci sequence, we can do planning poker, we can do all that. But we all know, right, that even with the highest performing teams, the value from that is not always as much in the estimation itself. It's about the dialogue. It's about the hanging of the dialogue around that, okay, and aligning and calibrating. So this is exactly what we seek to do with Metrix and Chill. Now, with this approach, you gain strategies to turn data, raw data or interpreted data, into powerful, pithy stories that will rapidly communicate the value that you are creating through the work that you are driving. You can do this on a team level, you can do it on an individual level, you can coach others to do this and transform the way that they interact around metrics. And in doing so, because there is a greater sense of purpose for both monitoring the metrics, but also seeking out particular metrics that are agreed, it actually gives a greater chance that teams and the individuals within them are going to fully show up in the sense of them feeling fully able to contribute and understand the picture and how they're impacting on the data. And as I've said here, this is definitely beneficial in tech, but I have used it in other sectors as well. Okay. Now, As Sath mentioned in introduction, I'm also from a personal agility background with the Personal Agility Institute as a recognised ambassador, so I'm able to coach and train around this. So the personal agility system has a premise of what really matters. The heart of that approach is about being able to really truthfully and authentically define what really matters to somebody. So in terms of Metrix and Chill, it's very relevant because Metrix and Chill has at the heart of it identifying what metrics truly or most nearly tell the story about the value that a squad is driving. Okay, so this what really matters principle is really, really important. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to join me on a journey, and you're going to get the chance to try some of these building blocks of Metrix and Chill live on this session. So we're going to be able to have some, dialogue live as you apply it. Fundamentally, Metrix and Chill is about using metrics to storytell. Okay, it's all about experimentation, iteration, looking at what is there, but also crucially what is missing or silent, because as we know from interactions with anybody, it's not just about what somebody says, is it? It's about what they don't say. And the same is exactly the true. It's exactly the same with metrics and data. Okay. Now, this last point, elevator pitch mindset has never been more important. Now, I want to play a little bit of a game with you, and I am going to stop sharing my screen just momentarily because I want you all in the chat, please, and don't put it in straight away because we're going to do a bit of a chat storm, okay? We are going to guess to the nearest second what is the average length of time it takes for an elevator ride in New York City. Okay, to the nearest second, and wait, don't put your answers in yet. I'm going to count to 3, and I want you all to put your guesses in. Okay, so don't be shy. Don't worry, there's not a prize other than a virtual Susannah Golden Star, which I give out very sparingly, but just have a go. So after 3 to the nearest second, what is the average length of time in seconds that an elevator ride in New York City takes? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, go. Well done, everybody, getting your guesses in. Right, okay. Oh, and we're keeping them coming. Excellent, fantastic. Right. Oh, Mao, I'm loving how accurate that is. My goodness, we have it to 4 decimal places. That is very accurate. Right, okay. So let's just have a bit of a skim read. Oh, we've got another guess. Let's have a look. What have we got here? So we've got 10, right? So we've got 2 people thinking 10 seconds. Okay. Now, this is a psychologically safe space, so don't be upset if you're not the nearest, okay? But according to the Harvard Business Review in June 2018, the average duration of an elevator ride in New York City is 118 seconds. Jamie Pye works for everything. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, so it's 118 seconds. So, wow. Right, can I just say 42 is always the answer because I am 42. I will take that. Okay, Sath wins. Well done, Sath. Jacqueline, you're a step ahead of me. I was trying to see who got the nearest. Okay, so Sath, what did you use to make that guess?
Absolutely nothing.
Right. Okay.
Completely random. It's like 100 seconds. That feels right. New York's got lots of very tall, high skyscrapers. It's not going to be that quick. It's not going to go on that long. So 100 seconds felt good.
Okay. I love that explanation. I love that rationale. And I love it mainly because, let's face it, with agility, we all know that we do that to some degree, right? However brilliant we are with frameworks and stuff, sometimes we're going with that gut instinct. And there is a tendency in the world of metrics and data to think that there's somehow different. Now, of course, with metrics and data and measurement, there are situations where we absolutely need to be accurate and we need to be confident in that measurement. That is a given. But that little bit of fun there was mainly to make the point around you've got one question, you've got one bit of data you're going after. There could be an infinite number of sources. If I'd left you for an hour to actually work out what the actual answer was, right, you all probably would have had your own techniques for doing that. And that is exactly the message with Metrix and Chill, that very often in the day-to-day, actually getting a hold of data and owning it in a very proactive way is often neglected by squads. So I am encouraging you to take this pause as the curtains come down in this session, reflect on, in your day-to-day, how meaningfully do you handle metrics and data to communicate the value that you are creating? Sprint by sprint, if not day by day. Okay. So very quick story here. And I think we might have a couple of Metrix and Chill alumni in the room that have just joined. So, so no telling the answer if you've joined for another time. But okay, where was this photograph taken? Any suggestions? Does anybody recognize that building? Does anybody recognize that woman?
Is it you?
It is me. Thank you. It's nice actually when somebody recognizes me, because I have been mistaken a couple of times as somebody else. That hasn't been particularly flattering actually, so it's really nice to be recognized as me. So that is me in front of Buckingham Palace in London at the Queen's garden party about 5 years ago. Now, yes, I'm showing off I went to the Queen's garden party, but there is a relevant explanation for why I'm sharing this at a Metrix and Chill session. Okay, so we've got another little bit of a game, all right? So again, it's Guess Who, and I appreciate some colleagues that are not in the UK may not be as familiar with these characters, but I'll invite this anyway. Does anybody recognise this man?
Yes.
Who is he?
Matt Hancock.
Matt Hancock, right. So for those of you who aren't aware, this is somebody that until very recently was our Secretary of State for Health in the British government. And does anybody recognise this man?
Yes.
Who is it?
George Osborne,
Right, thank you. So George Osborne was?
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Correct. So again, for those of you not familiar with the terminology, Chancellor of the Exchequer, again, he was the bloke in charge of the finances for the UK government going back several years. Right. Now, me, Matt Hancock and George Osborne. All right. So from a metrics and data perspective, if I told you that my connection with Buckingham Palace was that I had been nominated to attend the Queen's Garden Party for my services, not to agility at the time, but in my previous career in the world of adult learning, so services in those areas of highest poverty, I was linking with these two government ministers to basically tell them to get their policies sorted out and look at the data for the impact of adult learning provision, which was notoriously very, very difficult and slippery to measure, because you would see impacts such as people saying they felt happier, people saying they felt less scared to go out on their own, people saying they felt like they got a better bond with their grandchildren, all of this stuff that, you know, allegedly is about quantifying the unquantifiable, right? So when I used to link with these ministers, who do you think might have been the odd one out in those conversations?
You?
Me. And why might I? Why do you think it's likely that I was the odd one out?
Because they didn't want to hear what you had to say, probably.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do the work.
And what, sorry?
They didn't want to do the work to quantify.
Yes, well done. You're on it. That's exactly the point. Okay, so sometimes, and I'm equating these two government ministers here to our agile world, right? So when we're working with any framework in agility, if we're handling metrics or data, and the dreaded word, right, reporting, however that is presented. Now, we all need to do reporting to some degree or other, okay? However flat the hierarchy is, there is always some type of reporting, even if it's not called that. But effectively, they were my stakeholders. All right. They were my stakeholders in the same way as when we're obviously working in our agile teams, we'll have our stakeholders that we want to demonstrate a return on investment to, all right, or that value, or demonstrating that we've actually met requirements. Now, what I found that I needed to do when dealing with these two, and when I was preparing submissions to the government as cases to change government policy, I completely had to reteach myself for how I was going to talk about those metrics and the measurement of those outcomes, the change in the behavior that we saw. So if you think from a product perspective, where you are actually observing, where you have got a really good interface, from a product ownership perspective, maybe you've got really good, strong dialogue with your stakeholders, maybe you're getting some really great direct feedback from your users of product. All of that is fine. You might have all the data in the world, but if you do not know how best to translate that into vocabulary to really engage in a very rapid way your stakeholders, it will constantly feel as if you're fighting an uphill battle. Does anybody in the room recognize what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That means there's somebody with me. So I shall continue. So in terms of the approach, Metrix and Chill is a fusion of 7, what I can now see after years of applying it, are effectively standalone products, right? So it's very much drawing on my own professional coaching background, dating back nearly 20 years, around the GROW model, okay? So if you think about, the aspects of the GROW model from Sir John Whitmore, of course, coaching for performance, where you're looking at, effectively, you're looking at, your goals as opposed to the reality, the options, the will, what have you. So you're actually looking purely from a metrics and data handling perspective around where you want to get to, what the reality is, and how you're going to get there to improve things. So that ties in also with this idea of gap analysis. It's also very much tapping into the Pareto principle in terms of this idea that, as with many things, even with the best agile coaching and scrum mastery, right, you are never going to have complete certainty that you are heading a right direction, but it's that sweet spot, as we talk about in a social return on investment approach, which I mentioned here on number 5. It's that feeling that as a team, you are sufficiently calibrated around what metrics matter to you in your world, not the metrics that stakeholders are asking for, not the metrics that directors or the corporate board are asking for, metrics that matter to you, right? And these are not mutually exclusive from those other metrics that are asked for. But what I have seen happen is that by teams getting hold of their own data narrative through the metrics that they are choosing to take in the same way as with Scrum, where a team is choosing what work to take into the sprint, exactly the same with Metrix and Chill, where there is then a changing of the balance of power. So squads can actually then have conversations more meaningfully with stakeholders and those that are asking for data to be reported on, very often without actually realizing that it's a waste of time. Okay, so one of the things that we're also going to look at in this session is this element of Metrix and Chill called crafting the basket of measures. All right, so we'll go on to that. Personal agility I've mentioned, and the other key element is called value statementing, which, don't jump to conclusions, it's not value proposition, it's a specific technique which you can have a go at on this call. Right, so I will categorically say Metrix and Chill is not OKRs, it is not KPIs. Metrix and Chill is not about even what the right suite of metrics is. Metrix and Chill is almost like a prequel to any of those things. Metrix and Chill is an approach that effectively prepares the foundations of a team and nurtures a culture of a team that means it is ready to engage with a conversation about value. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. So sometimes people, because obviously, as we know, in the Agile community of practice as well, it's not a bad thing, but people can often tend to gravitate towards quite a mechanical view of which framework are we using here. Well, if we're talking about metrics, are we using OKRs? Are we talking about KPIs? So my point is that this is not about the specifics of the metrics that are appropriate for your domain, the environment you're working in. Only you locally can know what metrics really accurately tell the story of the value that you're driving. But Metrix and Chill is about creating space, legitimizing that space in a team culture to exclusively focus on what I'm about to take you through in terms of an approach. Is that a little clearer?
Yes, thank you.
Great, no worries. Okay, so in terms of chronology, but again, I will say this is very loose chronology. The two bits that absolutely can be done standalone and don't need to follow a particular sequence is basket of measures and value statementing, both of which we're going to look at in detail. But I'll take you through these 4 stages. Okay. So does anybody recognize which film this photograph is from, this clip? Got any Disney fans out there?
It's not Fantasia, is it?
It's a good guess. It could be, couldn't it, because of the colours and so forth?
Looks like is it like the Disney version of like Christmas Carol, like Scrooge?
It is spot on, it is. So yeah, exactly. So in A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, who are, other than Scrooge, who are the 3 main protagonists? Who are the 3 main characters that the story focuses on?
I'm embarrassed to say I've never even seen it.
Ah, no worries. That's like, I love that. I love that you're finding this a psychologically safe space to say that. That's brilliant. Any suggestions from anybody who knows the story?
The Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future.
Yes, brilliant. Spot on. Okay, so the Ghost of Past, Ghost of Christmas Present, and Ghost of Christmas Future. Now we can remove the word Christmas, okay, because it doesn't necessarily need to be Christmas. It's just this idea of the chronology that we've got: past, present, future. And that is exactly what we see with Metrix and Chill as an approach. And just to say, when I have used this with squads, if they have been very, very pushed for time, you know, those squads where they say, we can't create any extra sessions, we've got too many meetings, we've got too much work, we're up against it, you know, we're towards the end of the sprint, etc., etc. If that is the only way to engage with a squad around this, it is possible to get some meaningful value from doing this, especially if you have some existing rapport with colleagues. Say, for example, in a retro, you know, you could try dipping your toe in the water with this in a retro. Now, where I've seen it work best was where I was working longitudinally with squads, and they basically took ownership and they ended up doing this on a cadence quarterly, basically, almost to coincide with their ways of working, reviewing definition of ready, definition of done, because they valued this as part of their team culture so much, they just built it in, right? So what does this look like? So what they actually do is they first of all identify what metrics do we currently use, right? So that's like your Ghost of Christmas Present, okay? So you encourage the squad to completely just try and switch off, difficult though it is, from the demands of everybody asking for everything, and say to them, right, and I use an online collaboration board for this, but you know, if you're back in the office, you might want to use a flip chart or Post-its or whatever. You say to them, right, just completely just get everything down like a brainstorm. What metrics do we in the team currently use to tell our story? to indicate our value. Okay. You then, when everybody feels they've got it out their system, you then move them on to considering what metrics could we use. So note that this is about then trying to shift the mindset from thinking about what has been used historically in terms of metrics and data for reporting, and to some degree, the present. This is about future scoping. This is all about what metrics and data are we aware are out there that might be helpful, but for whatever reason, we've not used. And we don't dwell on that, we just get it down there. Now, what we then do is we use this kind of metaphorical, like shopping cart, you know, like shopping basket, where you imagine the metrics, you know, are cans on a shelf, okay? And that at that given moment in time, the team are encouraged to forget the rules in terms of the data and reporting, but they're encouraged to gravitate towards whatever metrics they have put on their online collaboration board, and to highlight those ones that are the most representative or they think are the most valuable, to give the true sense of the value of the team's work. So they then tend to dot vote on those to prioritize their top 3. So bringing in kind of the Kanban type of principle about WIP, you know, so they're not spreading themselves too thin. They vote on the top 3 and they agree, in addition to whatever reporting we feel we have to do, we are going to build in as a squad into our cadence a regular review of these particular metrics. And if we haven't got access to those metrics at the moment, we might, for example, have a retro action to agree how we're going to progress that and get access to those metrics. Does that make sense? Okay. And then crucially, this is not just a throwaway remark there. It's about then encouraging them to build it day to day so it becomes normal, right? We don't want this to seem just like a one-off session. So the basket of measures idea, like I said, where the squad is choosing what are their top 3 measures that they're putting in their basket. It's drawing on this idea of perceptual positioning in psychology and coaching, because you're thinking about, well, what would stakeholders make of that? Would that help us make our case? And also Irving Goffman's concept of framing, about seeing things from a different perspective. Any questions at this stage before we get into the next part?
I'd be curious about the references later, but not at the moment. It sounds like you've done some pretty deep research and it's interesting.
Sure. Okay. No worries. And I would say, actually, after today as well, you know, if anybody has got any questions, you know, I am on LinkedIn, so do just reach out to me. Right. So we're now going to get into kind of actual doing this mode. All right. So you've got your basket of measures. Okay. And I would invite you, even during this bit, right? You don't have to share it on the call, just locally, you know, whether you note it down, whether you've got it in your head. Just think now in your own context. Right this moment, if you got a call, right, from a stakeholder and were asked to demonstrate the value of the team's work that you're involved with, what would those measures be? Okay, so you don't need to tell me, but I invite you to try and get down what your top 3 would be. And it might not be metrics that you actually currently use. Now, just to come back to the elevator game we played at the beginning, the reason that I asked you to do that was not just to make the point about gut instinct. The point of it was also because, you know how I made reference to rapidly needing to influence stakeholders and there to be that, you know, united ability in squads to be able to quickly explain what the value being generated is. That's the connection with the elevator pitch, right? So what is an elevator pitch?
You have 100 seconds to pass on your message.
Exactly. And of course, that stat that I shared with you from Harvard Business Review, that was from 2018. But of course, in 2018, there wasn't anywhere near as much remote working, was there, online, you know, calls like this. Now, we all know that even with the return to work, that opportunity, you know, if we used to get in an elevator with a stakeholder and they said, oh, how things are going, you know, what's the team come up with? You know, you might have had that 100 seconds to start with, or 118 or whatever it was. But now, especially with the increased use of technology, the need to be able to reel that off can be almost instant, right? If somebody calls, that is so important that teams feel empowered to know what their data is saying about them, not just one or two roles in the team, but for everybody to have that understanding, because it's a source of pride. And I'm going to give you an example of this shortly. So the way this is achieved, once you've got your basket of measures, which remember is not fixed in stone, it's at the team's discretion for how frequently that is revisited, value statementing builds on and extends on this idea of value propositions. Now, it's value statementing because I have made it an active verb, because it's something that you and your colleagues can actively do. So there's an example here from the higher education sector, which is actually very relevant anyway to tech and agility. So where we look at value proposition, we're talking here, right? What are the critical metrics that have the potential to change an institution's value proposition? So that's kind of what we're getting at. We're looking through value statementing, through Metrix and Chill, to come up with a clear presentation of the metrics that actually have the power to change the mindset of those asking for data for reporting, to understand how that value is actually best represented. So I'm going to give you an example before you have your own go at this, okay? This is a practical example from a team that I coached last year. So this was a tech team, okay? And on a sprint review, the stakeholders, or one stakeholder, very enthusiastically said, "This is great. The tweak the team made on this app has saved the business around £25,000 per week." Okay. Now, that feedback didn't really seem to go anywhere. I was a bit bemused as a then Scrum Master to be seeing that feedback shared, and it was almost like the squad didn't know what to do with it. So it was kind of like the product owner kind of nodded. I was like, okay, right, next screen on the PowerPoint slide. And it was such a shame. It was such a missed opportunity. Okay. So there were clearly some cultural issues there. But what was very interesting was, and by the way, these keep coming back on the animation to make the point that you need to keep iterating on this, all right? You play around, you experiment with this. So about 3 weeks later, this second bit of feedback came in, but this time, it wasn't through the sprint review, it was through the delivery manager. So same squad, but this bit of feedback from the delivery manager was, oh, I was asked to present to the managers and I let them know that the team's operating costs per sprint are around £20,000 per sprint. Okay. Again, you can imagine the response was, well, a bit of shrug of the shoulders. Well, that doesn't mean anything to us. Why would we care, basically? But what I did was, using this value statementing approach and asking them to relook at stuff and giving them a bit of time in the session, I tasked them with going off with these two metrics and seeing what they could come up with. I said to them, create something using those metrics that is going to convince your stakeholders of what an amazing team you are. And this is what they came up with. Any reflections?
Human minds understand comparison better than absolute numbers. So I think that is a stronger statement because it relates the team's work to the business perspective.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Did I hear agreement there from somebody?
Yes.
Yeah. So why does that work from your point of view?
From mine?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's what it's all about for the business perspective. It's money. They are not concerned with anything else but the metrics.
Okay.
And
yeah.
how you deliver them that says it all.
Yeah, fantastic. I couldn't have said that better myself. That's absolutely great because, at the end of the day, we're talking the language, right? All we're doing, it's not manipulative. All it's doing is taking metrics that might seem unconnected, right? Provided we in our heart of hearts believe that they are accurate, that they are authentic. Obviously, I'm not suggesting making anything up, but if we actually are using and blending together metrics in playful ways that can actually create statements that we never would have thought would have actually arisen from those two metrics, for example, coming in unrelated, you can see that that is a very, very powerful elevator pitch that could be just reeled off by anybody in a squad, that might be asked by anybody in the organization. So why is your team so great? Why have we spent £20,000 a sprint on what you do? Well, the value of the savings generated through the team's work is at least double the operating cost per sprint.
So the sprint length here is 2 weeks, is it?
Sorry?
The sprint length here is 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and what happened was, it wasn't just the statement. What then starts to happen, and I saw it with this team, because this team had a distinct lack of a celebration culture, and there was quite a lot of cynicism about the product owner and all the rest of it. They united around this statement, and you could see the light bulb go on. You could see them thinking, all this worry we've had about people thinking that we're going to lose our jobs because they don't think we're worth the money, we don't need to worry about it as much anymore, because we've got the data, we can show them. So that can be in the mindset of a squad. That can be massively empowering, and it really did change their day-to-day interactions. But again, encouraging them to iterate over and over again, and play with different blends of metrics. And as I've said there, you can then iterate and augment. So what I would like you to do now, and we're going to do it live, we're not going to do breakout rooms, and it is an incredibly short length of time to ask you to do this, but I am going to invite you to do it anyway, because I know it's worked when I've done previous sessions, okay? Using these guide rails for value statementing, I would like you to have a go now on the call at trying to craft your own value statement, okay? So we've got what I call the Goldilocks principle, okay? It doesn't have to be spot on. It doesn't need to be exact. It doesn't need to be massively vague. You just need to feel that it's actually true to your situation. The Little Red Riding Hood principle, again, it needs to be a focus on the value, in the same way as when we're designing, acceptance testing criteria, right? It's that thing around, is it testable, and with a user story, what is the value that we're seeking to drive? Just have a go now. So I'll just give you a few minutes, but think about, a couple of metrics in your own daily experience. And then I want you to just try and play a bit and just try and blend them together. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a minute or so to have a go. I mean, normally if you were doing Metrix and Chill with a team, you'd give them, 20, 30 minutes, right, to have a go at this. But just have a go at the principle and just see how far you get. And there's no right or wrong. It's just about playing with it and seeing what you come up with. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking for 1 whole minute. Do you think I can do it?
If you use the mute button, it's cheating.
Okay, so you've had a minute. So who wants to be really brave? And trust me that I am very friendly, and I'm not going to I'm not going to have a go at anybody for not having the right answer. Who would like to say what they've come up with? Did you have a couple of metrics, and how have you tried to blend them to make a value statement? Or does anybody have a couple of metrics that you're prepared to share so we can have a go at it live?
A couple that I was thinking about was team satisfaction. So, on a scale,
Yeah.
and some measure for pressure, and some
Okay.
measure for innovation. Like an innovation index.
Okay, so let's just bring those down to one word each. So just run us through that again, please.
Satisfaction,
Yeah.
pressure, and innovation.
Thank you. Satisfaction, pressure, innovation. Okay. So thinking about your work context then, and again, you can make it fictional. It doesn't have to be too specific. But do you want to take a couple of those, for example, and put some kind of metric? So in terms of satisfaction, for example, imagine a scenario. So what percentage should we put on reported colleague satisfaction in their daily work?
40%.
Okay, so 40%. Okay, and do you want to choose one of pressure or innovation?
I'd put 30% on innovation.
Okay, so with both of those metrics you've chosen, we're looking for a positive trajectory, right? I think it's fair to say we want to boost satisfaction, we want to boost innovation. Okay, so how would you blend those statements together? How would you blend those metrics together? If you had two metrics, you've had a 40% increase in reported satisfaction of colleagues, and you've got a 30% increase in innovation, however, as a squad, you choose to measure that using the metrics. Yeah. You blend those together, and then how do you state that as a value statement? So something like, through increasing our team health, we have an increased satisfaction rate of 40%, which we believe has contributed to a 30% increase in innovation as measured by da.
Yeah, that works.
Right. Now, I'll admit that was not my finest value statement because it was very long. However, we have enough skill in the room here, right? If we had longer, we have enough skill to break that down, right? To make it more concise. And of course, because you're saying as evidenced by, you are then claiming the power, because you are then not only communicating the impact of the positive change that you have made as evidenced by these metrics that people might not be asking you for, but you are putting up front. You are also signposting them to the very specifics of what leads you to make that statement, what makes you so confident. So I would encourage you to have a go at this, in your own settings. Just have a play. You'd be surprised what you can come up with, if you just experiment a bit with this stuff. And my virtual door is open to anybody who would like to play with a value statement with me. Maybe you've got some metrics, you're not sure how to blend them, you want to bounce some ideas off. And I'm absolutely happy for any of you to reach out to me and have that conversation. So you've just done that. And I think I'm going to actually leave it there for today, because we've covered the key elements in terms of basket of measures and value statementing. So yeah, Sath, if I can hand back over to you, please. And thanks everybody for your participation.
If I can shout out really quick, could you put your LinkedIn in the chat so everyone can connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I will do that. Yeah. And if Sath's taking some questions, I will attempt to copy that off now live while we're on the call.
Yeah.
I think I already got you, but it was a little tough to find you.
No worries. No worries.
Do you want me to put your LinkedIn in the group for everyone in the chat?
That'd be brilliant, Sath, if that's okay. Thank you.
Let me do that.
Okay,
we're already connected, so it's easy for me to do that.
That's fine.
Right. So just for everyone's benefit. So yeah, great session, Suzanne. Fantastic. Loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Lots of great takeaways. going to have to bring it to a sharp close, but we maybe have time for a couple of questions. So if you do have a question for Suzanne, welcome to put your hand up, and we'll lead you in. If there's any burning questions, because I'm hosting another session straight after this. It is on the same Zoom, so you're welcome to stay on, but I will need to stop the recording. So yeah, any questions? There was a lot of stuff covered there in a short amount of time. No questions?
I had a question that's about cohesion vertically and horizontally. So, it's something that the OKRs purport to do, is this horizontal top-down inheritance, which has its problems. And one criticism has been that it doesn't deal with horizontal alignment. But just the general subject of alignment with approach, I could see from dot voting and some other things that on a squad level that would happen. Is it something that you've dealt with on a broader level?
Yeah, it is absolutely. No, it's a great question. Thank you. And it is, and it's something that I found actually to be very effective as well, in terms of going not just cross-functional, but across the different strata, of our allegedly very flat hierarchies in agile organizations. But it's a great leveler, actually. It's a great leveler, because what you then start seeing is some raised eyebrows, that then move into a more kind of listening stance from maybe some leaders that hear people in the dev teams talking about particular metrics that they've never even heard of. So for example, from a DevOps point of view, maybe leaders are talking about things like DORA metrics, and they're very focused on, we must have this dashboard. The dashboard is going to solve everything. And then actually they might hear an associate developer say something about a particular metric that they had never even thought might actually be a really good information feed for them. So yeah, so I've found both horizontally and vertically, it can be really well applied.
Sounds like a lot of it is in the pitch. How
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not just the pitch from one or two key people, right? The point of this is that it might start with confident agilists, whether they're in a product owner role or because this is massively popular in product, for obvious reasons, because of thinking around the customer need. But it might start with one or two particular roles, but actually then the idea is that everybody feels empowered then to drive that. And very quickly, Seth, because I know we need to wrap up, but one great example of where this was actually really taken on board by a squad was they actually built in a Microsoft Planner tab on their Teams channel that they use day to day for chat, that had their basket of measures in there. So it was very visible. It was a central artifact, that people valued, that they had in there because they knew that there was a cadence around it. And that was great to see. That was great to see them actually thinking, this is ours, we're shaping this. This is not about reporting.
It's very empowering, I think.
I'm glad you think so, Greg. That's great to hear.
Yeah, that's people really need that at a number of different levels. So I think you accomplished your goal, at least for me.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I hope others feel the same. Thank you so much, Seth, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great session. Loved it. And thanks to all of you for joining and making it a great experience. And thanks for the questions and participation. Yeah, super session. And yeah, I hope you enjoy whatever else I've got planned for the rest of Access Agile. And yeah, I'm about to just host another session, and my wonderful guest has arrived, so you're welcome to stay on.
I would love to, because I know Johanna is fantastic. I have seen her speak before. I'm going to go and get my son into bed now, though.
Listen, thanks again.
Thank you so much. Great to see you. Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.